Welcome to Barnstable Today. I'm Nick Cortez. This week in the town of Barnstable began with tragedy as 31-year-old Todd Lampley was shot and killed Sunday night as he watched TV inside his girlfriend's house on Fresh Holes Road in Hyannis. The first murder in Barnstable since 2009 has set off an intensive investigation as well as an outpouring of emotions and concern from and for neighbors in the surrounding area. A number of our guests this week on Barnstable This Morning shared with us their reactions to this sad event, as well as their words of support for the many good people living in that neighborhood who are trying to return to normalcy. Today, we'll share with you some of the highlights of those discussions, beginning with Barnstable Police Chief Paul McDonald. On Tuesday, March 1st, the night before an emotional community meeting at Barnstable Police Headquarters, the chief brought us up to speed on the investigation. Here, he talks with us about the victim, Todd Lampley, and his history of involvement with other known criminals. The chief also offers a message of reassurance to area residents.
He does have a history. He's been in town approximately 10 years. He's originally from Belzoni, Mississippi. He is well known to the police department, both the Barnstable and the state police. With that being said, he does have a record, but I will also tell you that dealing with him in the past, he's always been pretty much a gentleman when dealing with the police department, but he does have a record. When you look at this incident for face value, when you first look at it, it definitely is not a random shooting. It's I will classify this as Mr. Lampley was obviously targeted. Whoever did this, the suspect, when they approached the house, they made some movement that tried to conceal their identity. They obviously had a plan. They knew what they were doing. They did not act. It was not one individual. It was at least two individuals. So this has to be classified as a premeditated murder.
Mm-hmm. And that would be of the first-degree variety, yes?
Correct.
Mm-hmm. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about the case in just a second, but I seized on the comment that this is not a random act, and most of the violent crimes that you and I have talked about over the past year plus on this program have not been. Maybe there's only been one or two at the very most, and I think that that's probably an important point to discuss here a little bit.
Absolutely. You know, a lot of people have compared this shooting to the shooting that we had back in 2007 on General Patton Drive when Jacques Sellers was shot. That was more of a random event. The two individuals that were arrested, Mr. Russ and Mr. Green, they were trying to send a message to the individual living in that house, and Mr. Sellers was just visiting. He was shot, I would say, more accidentally. This shooting here on Fresh Holes Road with Mr. Lampley, this individual, Mr. Lampley, he was targeted.
Mm-hmm. Now, you bring up Anthony Russ and that 2007 shooting and the ultimate death of Jacques Sellers. And a lot of sources, neighbors in the area, are speculating and making connections that Mr. Lampley's death had something to do with that 2007 shooting where Julian Green was sentenced to life in prison for second-degree murder. And, of course, as we know, Anthony Russ was acquitted outright. What are the chances that either of these two men are involved directly or indirectly in this situation?
Well, it's too early to speculate, but whenever you're investigating a murder investigation, you have to look at motive, and certainly the motive is there. Mr. Lampley was there. Mr. Green was found guilty. Mr. Russ was found not guilty. DeVaris Hampton, who was a star witness, said one thing at the Julius Green trial. He was found guilty, and then he changed his story for Mr. Russ's trial, and Mr. Russ was found not guilty. But it's interesting, when DeVaris Hampton did testify, he mentioned that Lampley was the one actually involved in the murder. So there's obviously a connection there, and that's something we are definitely looking at.
What can you say to the people of Barnstable about all this?
Well, this is a random event. There is no need for anyone to live in fear that this could ever possibly happen to them. This was a targeted individual. And we are going to have a meeting here tomorrow at the station at 6 o'clock. We're going to try to address everyone's fear. A lot of people are associating this with what happened, 5 years ago. We brought the car team down to Fresh Holes Harriman Road. It's a little bit different. I would almost characterize this as an isolated incident. We haven't had that many problems down Fresh Holes Harriman Road in many, many years. And again, this was a targeted individual. When you go back to 5 or 6 years, in the course of that summer, there was probably a shooting at least once every weekend for approximately 10 weeks in a row, and they were random events. I mean, people were shooting firearms, and they're going through a neighbor's side of the house through the window. One of them was lodged in a baby's bedroom in the drywall, and that's when we kind of went down there in force and set up a team 24 hours a day. So that was a little bit different, back then to compare what's happened now. This is more of an isolated instance, and that's why we want to get everybody, in the station to discuss, what happened that night, and we want to address their other concerns too that they might have in the neighborhood.
Town Council President Fred Chirigotis was among several town officials who attended Wednesday night's community meeting at Barnstable Police Headquarters. He joined us here the following morning to talk about what he saw and heard, and to call upon the neighbors in attendance to use this opportunity to come together, cooperate with police, and prevent future violence.
Pretty simple, really. I mean, and the chief has been great in helping people put together a community watch, and so that neighborhood watch, so that people can look out for their own neighborhood. And the chief is really encouraging people, and he's had meetings in various places around town, in various neighborhoods where people are concerned about, all kinds of crime. And they help people put together a neighborhood watch, and the neighbors themselves police their area because they're there all the time. They know who belongs in the houses and who doesn't. They know who's doing what. You just, it doesn't take long if you're there every day to see what's going on. Mm-hmm. And those are the people who really need to let the police know so that the police can take their action.
Did you find that there was a lot of fear in the room last night, or did you find that it was mostly anger and mostly questions of what we can do? I'm just curious to see if you can kind of take the pulse of that neighborhood and the folks who live there for us.
I think there is much more a sense that people are isolated because they haven't connected, and we've seen in other neighborhoods where the community came together. Actually, I want to say right at a meeting at the police station, where the neighbors exchanged, they lived next door to each other and didn't know each other. And they exchanged phone numbers, and they got their names, and they decided we need to communicate with each other as a neighborhood, and we need to be together, because if I stay in my house with the shades pulled and the doors locked and I don't talk to anybody, I'm isolated, and I feel alone. And if I have 100 people who are all feeling alone, maybe if they talk to each other, they'd have a powerful group of 100. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a pretty strong message from the chief, that we can partner with you, and we can partner with each other, and we can have a strong community, and we can have a safe community.
Later on Thursday, State Representative and Hyannis native Demetrius Atzelis joined us to share his perspective on Todd Lampley's criminal history as a possible factor in his murder. He also joined Council President Chirigotis in calling upon neighbors not to be fearful and to cooperate with police.
He could have been the nicest man in the world to his family, to his daughters, but the reality is, he was put into a position because of what he had been doing, and it was a payback, retribution. Who knows? You can speculate till the cows come home, but obviously there was an issue of illegal activities, and this is what happens, and it's too bad. It's really giving that area a black eye. There's a lot of homeowners, people who rent their homes down there, who want to be part of our community. And what I'm going to say right now, if any of them are watching, they shouldn't be afraid. They should get out there and talk to the police, call them. They can call in with full understanding that they'll be safe. Let them know what they saw, what's happening in that neighborhood. Because right now, there is that problem. We have to find out who the perpetrators are, because, the next person to get hurt could be an innocent child, could be an innocent adult. It could be a grandmother or a grandfather. And people shouldn't be living in fear over there.
Remember, if you'd like to see any of these complete interviews, you can watch full-length episodes of Barnstable This Morning online. Check out our online video archives at town.barnstable.ma.us. Well, that's all for now. Everybody have a good weekend. I'm Nick Cortez, and we'll see you next time on Barnstable Today.